So good morning, I believe, to all of you. I think we're all gathered here in the Eastern time zone of the US, so it's still okay to maybe say good. No, Patricia is further out west than Eastern. You're like an hour earlier, I think, than the rest of us. But good morning is maybe still appropriate to the first author jam of the new year, 2024. I'm delighted to have with me Ryan, Patricia, Dave, and Lisa. And we think that maybe Carol Gorlick is going to try to join us here in a moment. We wanted to just gather as we do every month and have this space of connection and invitation and sort of unscripted open agenda to connect and share what's top of mind or top of your pile or top of your list. Or if you want to go down a couple of notches and share what's at number 5 or 6, that would be welcome as well. The invitation I wanted to make is to maybe, if that feels appropriate to you, to just share a joy, an accomplishment, a surprise, something from the old year that you're taking forward into 2024. I think we have quite a few conversations this time of year around, the kind of things that we're putting on our agenda or that we're renewing or that we're refocusing on. But I had an impulse from a conversation with a family member recently that was sort of, for me, that welcome refocus to say what from the old year is something that you want to make sure that continues or that you take forward or that continues to provide inspiration in where it is that you're headed in the new year. If something else resonates from you that's only tangentially related to that or adjacent, feel free to jump on that as well. But that would be my invitation.
I think it's a great subject. Because we're 4 days into the new year and anticipating more joy. The word that came to my mind about the entire year was belonging. Because I'm sitting here in northwestern Connecticut on a country road and have been now for it seems like a long time with the pandemic. And I had a whole career of being a professor, a director, or dean, whatever the titles, and absolute belonging until I retired. And then I floated. And then when I reconnected, particularly with Theo and Steve and the library, I found a little bit of a foothold where I could show up. Hey, here I am. And over this last several years, that's developed into my social media presence and great conversations and being part of audiences, not participating audiences like Patricia's sessions. And it's just a nice feeling to be over 80 and belong, as opposed to sitting in a nursing home wearing paper slippers, which scares the hell out of me every time I think of it.
We'll come find you and help out. We'll come find you and help out before then.
I'll go. Dave, I love that you bring belonging to that, because in 2023, my mother, who is in her 80s, just 81, became ill, and her illness inspired a big change in my family system, and to move from Charlotte to Cincinnati to embrace togetherness with mom and pop and my wife's parents. And this is, I think, belonging now here in a place that's dear to my heart. We lived here for 22 years, and that sense of calling to care for, or to be here and not yet be a source of caring, of care, but to be here and caring and
Yeah,
and
big difference.
honoring them. And so that we are now 3 hours in one place and 15 minutes from the other set. So outside the professional stuff, what is now to attach to a new place and feel a deep sense of belonging is present with me from 2023. And I'm going to carry that into 2024 and 5, 6, 7, 34, 44 and beyond. So
I want to add, underscore though, Ryan, that it's not outside your professional stuff. It's inside your professional stuff. It gives your professional stuff a whole new character. When I first met you, we were podcasting with you, and you were many, many miles away from what you now are at home. And I suspect that combining, family and being able to be close and caring, basically on call, is what makes it easier and more fun for you to do the creative work that you do and carry out the conversations you do. So I think you're inside your professional life.
thank you. That opens some space. I love it.
I just have a reaction in the moment that is something that Dave, both you and Patricia, I've known the two of you to be really just amazing at, to have to suggest sometimes those slight perspective shifts and those, well, have you thought about it in this context or from this angle? I'm really grateful to think of the two of you as people that inspire that in my own practice.
It's the work, really, of all the things we say. You enter into a social system of people who have a desire to move ahead, but maybe sometimes are confused about how to do it. And you listen and you open yourself up. We talked about love last couple of times. Come with love and see what moves you. And when Ryan spoke, it put that idea in my head, and I could have held it because I told Lisa I talked too much when I watched the video from last week. And I thought, well, the hell with it. If that helps Ryan and the rest of us a little bit to have that insight, then put it out there. So thank you.
If it was disruptive, Dave, we would tell you. We like you. So we would tell you. So I guess
I can
for
let
me,
my 21-year-old cat go out to pee because I don't want her to do it on my office couch.
very practical. All right. Well,
Good girl.
I guess what I'll add at the moment, although I'd like to maybe think about belongingness a bit more. I think for me, there's a lot in 2023 of recognizing things you can impact versus cannot. As far as others and such. But one thing came up repeatedly, whether personal or professional, which is expectation. And just over and over, and I would be thinking over situations, no matter where they were, personal or professional or change. It was just tooth and nail of one person's expectation or group's expectation versus another. And so I think that's what I'm taking into 2024, because if I'm, in the team or in the group or just impacting the situation, trying to balance those expectations between folks, I think is one place that can have an impact, even if I'm not the one who's got to do all the changing. I think that's what is consistently in my mind right now. for 2024.
Yeah, it's great. Again, belonging and also having others that have expectations are in the same camp. When you reach a point in life, if it ever happens where no one expects anything of you, you say, oh boy, I'm free now. I'm free of obligation. I'm free with no, that would be horror. It's great to, even if the expectations compete, which they normally do, it's what keeps the water boiling in a nice way, you know, with a frog. uh,
Well, I'll go next. I think 3 things from 2023 that I'll be pulling forward into 2024. One is we have this annual retreat, and but every time we create an event like the one that Dave was talking about, the essential conversation, or whatever it is we're doing, the intention is to design for spaces of welcome, safety, and belonging. And after the retreat, or during the retreat, which was hybrid, one of the people who was attending, he's in Cleveland and Virginia, I think, Cincinnati and Virginia. Anyway, he was attending virtually, and he spoke and then has written, and I've captured it in several, put it in several marketing emails actually, that it was the first time that he ever felt human among humans.
wow.
He's an 86-year-old Black man, former civil rights activist, very involved in a lot of activities, spiritual and community and life-giving activities. But he said that the space that we had created was one of humanity, or of, I don't know what how he would actually describe it, but those were his words. It was the first time that he felt human among humans. He wasn't a Black man. He wasn't an older man. He wasn't a financial advisor. He wasn't a member of anything. He was just there as a human being. And that's not something that I did. That's something the community did. It was, we set the stage, we create the design, we have the practices, we know how to create these spaces, but the real invitation is for the community to create that space together and to foster those skill sets for the community to be able to do that. Is like, that's what I get up for every single day.
Mm.
Where that plays into my personal life is, there's a high integrity in that space. In my personal life, there's some, there's mending to be done with different people in our family, with a couple of our kids, but also with my family of origin, are all very red, very conservative, very evangelical, very red. And in order to be in relationship with them, it is about love, Dave. That I love them, they love me, and I feel like, what I can love them more than they've ever felt love, because I have that privilege, that capacity. And that reminds me, I need to reach out to them and tell them I love them,
Mm-hmm.
and keep telling them that I love them, so that we can have conversations, that the conversations will come up this year.
Yeah.
Election. But it requires a lot of personal integrity to have these conversations. And I'm still, I still have to work on that. I have to work on being in integrity. And, so that my words match, my actions match my words, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I've spoken.
That's a project for all of us in the country in the next 10 months, only 10 months. How can we hold on to loving relationships and create new ones when we know that there's a statistically high chance that of 10 people, 3 of them are going to be people we totally disagree with, no matter what side of the spectrum. And if they tend to understand that they stand for Trump, then that's going to be a big challenge for me, because they're going to turn around and vote for him. And so, yeah, it's going to be quite a challenge this year. And I have a friend who said, "Oh, well, that's fine. I'll just tune out of politics for the year." And my response to him was, "Okay, now let's multiply that choice by tens of thousands and thousands of people who tune out of politics at the very time we're on the verge of throwing our sacred institutions into the crapper." So who's going to stop that? Who's going to, even if they want to, make that happen if so many people tune out? So that's going to be a conversation. I know some folks I'll be having it with, particularly when I go back to my home state to visit. So, but the other point, though, the statement of an 86-year-old person who says, "This is the first time I feel human among humans," that gives us a real timeline on what we've personally and societally gone through these last 70 years or so. Because there was a clear time in the law that he wasn't a person.
That's true.
It was the law. You've seen the Green Book. For you young kids over here, Lisa and Ryan, there was a Green Book. There were rules and where entertainers could or could not eat, stay, whatever, perform. And they were in our lifetime, and particularly those of us who have made it into the 80s. And there were many, many times when humanity was questioned. And part of why I came up with a feeling of needing belonging at this point is, in a way, as we get up into this range of life, you can almost feel that people are saying, "Well, he's by the sell-by date now, and he doesn't have much more to offer." And if that's true of a lot of us elderly folks, that's awful too, because we feel less human. So good for you. And I agree that that's how the community makes you feel when you're participating in your sessions.
Yeah, Patricia, for me, that resonates really, really quite powerfully. That's amazing that he got to feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with our second youngest on his college essays, and he's my bonus son. So he's a young Black man, and he was reflecting on what it is like being Black in Toledo, Ohio. And I was surprised that one of the things he was talking about, he was reflecting on, what is my experience of prejudice or of racism. He says one of the most common things that he gets to hear that make him feel categorized. I don't know if that's the word that he used. I'm trying to remember what word he used, but that he's not Black enough.
Right.
Like you act too white.
Right.
Or you're not acting
gee.
Black enough as
You can't win.
Ironically, as a put down from white people quite frequently. I don't know if they intended as a put down or if if it is an expression of surprise. I'm not sure how reflected that is or isn't, but
Wow.
so to be able to for a gentleman that is in an age group where he would remember growing up what it was like to not be considered a person by a good amount of the populace to get to that place, that is pretty powerful stuff.
Isn't it?
Lisa,
what
when you go
every-
ahead.
Isn't it what we want for everyone?
Right.
I mean, that's what I want for everyone to feel. I mean, that's what collaborative change is about, right? It's about bringing the conditions, setting the conditions, and growing the skill sets for that, the capacity to be welcoming and safe, creating safety and helping people to belong, just even as neighbors, not not a tribe, not a group, but just as people.
Yeah, we don't have to have political agreement to belong to one another, right?
That's right.
What a concept in our day and time.
Right.
That's a really good point.
I belong to my family. That's right. That's a great point, Teo.
Yeah.
You want to go next?
Yeah. I wasn't sure exactly. I had sort of when I posed my initial invitation, I had a couple of things that I had in mind. They have sort of faded in the background a little bit listening to you all. I think to me, something that has emerged really as a beautiful reality of my last year is sort of that. I guess it's an insight that I want to take forward, that I have frequently in the past put limitations on myself as to where I believed or felt I could belong in conversation. And I think I had qualifiers that included things like, certain levels of shared interest or certain value alignment around, some politics maybe. And I have found that actually some of the most meaningful conversations continue to be with people that I wholeheartedly disagree with, but that I am able to have a conversation with as to what is that disagreement about. And I want to remember that I can afford myself and others an openness to want to understand, okay, why do we disagree? How did you get to your viewpoint? Tell me more as to what your conviction stems from. I want to understand how you got here rather than dismiss what it is that you're telling me because I feel I have factual, anecdotal, other sort of evidence that maybe makes me think that I know better than you in terms of this particular thing that we're disagreeing on. I had a conversation over lunch with our youngest just last night, and he shared that he is concerned that he would disappoint me and his saxophone instructor by the sort of effort that he's putting forth. And I'm concerned that you're going to be disappointed. Mr. Schneider is going to be disappointed. Paul, I'm not going to be disappointed because you're not doing what I'm saying. I'm going to be disappointed if you tell me what your expectation is for yourself. There's that, you said, didn't you speak of expectations earlier? Right. I'm not looking for you to meet my expectations, but I want you to communicate yours.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to do a lesson every week, then let's talk about, what is your expectation for yourself? How much do you think you want to practice? I'm not going to be the parent that makes you practice 2 hours every day. It's not going to happen. I don't have that discipline for myself at the moment. Heck, I should be reading 2 more articles right now for the class that's coming up. But I think sometimes the expectations we put on ourselves, and to get back to this conversation piece, the expectations I have sometimes for who I invite in the conversation I need to review and communicate more clearly. I think to open more doors, to have maybe conversations that aren't the most comfortable or the most. Oh yeah, I agree with that. I think we do too much of. I think I do too much of the. Oh yeah, I agree with that conversation. Like I'm not learning something new if you're not challenging me with a different viewpoint.
See, that's
Which gets me back to Patricia and Dave, the experience that I've had with the two of you, specifically to just offer a nudge in a different direction and say, okay, yes, so we agree over here, but what about looking at it from over here? Or what about this angle or this perspective shift? So
You saying that
I'm complete.
brings me back, Teo, to, well, first you said expectations. So all of you that spoke, you can feel expectations in there, like in different ways. But then you're bringing it, at least to me, to that yes and conversation. And just because I say yes doesn't mean I agree. It means I acknowledge. Yes, I acknowledge what you're saying. And so to build off of that piece, when it comes to expectations, so I'm trying to think of similar conversations, like you say, what you want to have, but they're not comfortable. I can't immediately change someone's expectations, right? That's the thing I can't do, but I can restate and or clarify mine, right? And in that, I'm just seeing that more and more I can have them listen, possibly, right? And have that opportunity to have them listen and then have a conversation. Now I haven't had to do it in the political spectrum yet. Haven't attempted that, but at minimum through some of the conflict in my work, different squads I work with, etc. I can see it in other personal spaces, but again, trying to put my mind around where to start there. But like I said, just over and over, expectations just keep kind of speaking out in everything I hear, and certainly when it comes to change, expectations are paramount. So.
yeah. I think
I don't know
I'm
where to
sorry.
rewind back on this one, but I this brings me back again. All this talk about expectations, it has expectations, disappointment, obligations, and that what are we? So Dave, we started with this. We're expecting a huge change here in our polity, in the political environment.
Yeah.
And we each have our own internal expectations about that, of course. And I guess, and bringing this back to the theme, what are we bringing forward? And what do we need to let go of here from 23 to bring forward into 24? And in order to, what are we holding on to that we need to let go so that we can meet expectations? And so, I mean, there's this whole arc, right? And thinking about it, and a very explicit thing again for me personally that to take forward is I'm holding on. I think many of us are holding on to this fear of disappointing people, right? And that if you have to realize if we're holding on to expectations, we're holding on to this, and that's what we need to let go of, is that fear of the expectations, and leaping into that place of, as Teo said, this curiosity. Don't come forward to a conversation with contempt. Come with curiosity. Don't look to protect yourself. Look to connect with the other human, from humanity. So, and I think letting go of that fear of disappointment, and that the specific insight, and then I'll be complete, is that I want to disappoint more people this year. Serious, because I spent a lot of last year being afraid to disappoint the people I care about.
Yeah. You just entered a new laboratory, the Ryan Erickson Laboratory of testing the effects of my disappointing A, B, C, and D. And by the time you get to D, after you're disappointed the first three, you probably record in your journal, hey, that wasn't so bad. In fact, that opened them up to tell me why they were holding such a high expectation for how I was going to make them feel. You've never made me feel bad before. Well, what they're saying is, I expect you to never make me feel bad. And in your laboratory experiment, you made him or her feel bad, and it didn't hit you in the face like a wet fish. It was okay. And then it broke, maybe it even broke out a conversation, back to Patricia. Maybe finally they just released it and said, I've been kind of holding my breath every time we've met. And I feel like 10 years younger because we've yelled at each other with loving eyes. Those are the kind of experiments that we have awaiting for us. And if you set them up as experiments with a bit of a hypothesis or conjecture, as Peter Vale and I would probably say, you're going to be managing your own growth.
Yeah, I actually hear you, Ryan, saying the let go of fear, not so much expectation, but I would think embracing expectation in clarifying it.
Yeah.
Right. Let go of the fear of facing it and clarifying it with someone else, aligning it.
And what are the chances that the reaction you just might get is, oh my God, you thought I was going to be disappointed about that? What gave you the impression that I was going to be disappointed with you doing X versus Y?
Exactly.
I have been a superstar world champion for a long time in my life, making assumptions about what people expected of me and delivering that, and never checking once if that is actually what they were hoping I would deliver.
Good point.
Factually, actually, professionally, emotionally, or otherwise.
Yep.
And once I finally got around to can I check my expectations with you? They were like, what? You thought that was going to disappoint me? I never had that expectation of you to begin with.
Dale, when you're being a musician, when you put that practice on, would you perform with the same idea that I don't want to disappoint these listeners with my music?
Interesting.
My conjecture is you don't at all. You just want to play music. You have to play music. If it entertains, great, but you're doing it in a very different way than you do when you have your other hats on, where you've got a deadline for a proposal. If you don't make it, it's going to be disappointing. But that probably doesn't bring the best out in you when you have to write a proposal versus, hey, I think I'll sit down and write a little music and play it and see if a few people like it. If they don't, I'm the one who has to listen to it from the inside out. So that's my question. Do you feel the same way as a musician as you do a proposal writer or a student or an editor?
That's really interesting, because I think it's for some reason what comes to mind for me, it's like there's a spectrum. There are certain spaces of music making where I can show up, where I can just trial stuff and just let's see what happens. And that's probably some of my favorite spaces, is that wide open improvisational door where let's just see what happens. This is what I'm going to do, and you spend some time, typically, at least in my practice experience, you spend a little bit of time setting some sort of minimal structure. A lot of that comes in specifically in jazz improv, that comes from sort of a studied expectation that you have of one another as to you've either learned by doing that there are certain formats, or you've gone to some class or school and studied a little bit of it. So you have some structure around, let's see what happens. But then, so for example, I also have done just a couple of weeks ago a gig that I do at least once every year that we call Beer and Carols, where it's literally singing Christmas songs, typically hymns, Christmas hymns. And then the line after every song concludes is, depending on the setting, you know, if it's in a church context, there might be a hallelujah or amen, but there's oftentimes also and to all a good night, and everybody takes a big drink. That format is not as free because I'm working towards certain audience context and expectation of everybody gets to sing as out of tune as they want to along with these Christmas songs. And so you have to provide a little bit more structure for that, not to derail. But then I also have some interplay with the other musicians there.
So it is a spectrum.
I think so.
What it's what, and it's bigger than you think. I think are you composing something, right? Are you composing something? Or are you interpreting someone else's composition?
Mhm.
Are you improvising in the moment? Who are you improvising with? What's the venue? Are you doing this as a professional? Are you doing this with other professionals? Or are you doing this as
Context.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it's all about that, right? And this is, are we collaborating in creation in real time? Are we collaborating to make a studio recording that we're going to release and have distributed out there? You know, which, yeah, it's context, it's purpose, and again, any musician, you know, Teo and I might even have differing opinions about, am I making this art for someone, or am I solely making it for me, or is it something in between, right? Yeah, the conjecture, yeah, that's my conjecture, at least. You know, it's the context.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just tying that back to Patricia, because are they having you there to create that community and environment that will have them enjoy whatever it is you're composing, right? Like, is it that kind of environment? I think you'd like it to always be that type, right? You just come and do your thing, and the community makes them want to be there.
Yeah. And, you know, this isn't just nice stuff. Right after George Floyd's murder, you know, Minneapolis was burning. And Craig had the idea, we knew our ward council person, and Craig had the idea to reach out to her, because what is happening, the parallel of this is what's happening in the media right now, with all the swirl of bad news, depending on what news channel you're listening to. So Teo, I hear that most people, your kids and my grandsons who are early 20s, and get their news on TikTok or other channels, not news channels.
Yep.
But for the rest of us that get news channels, there's so many swirling, competing, fearful, fear-baiting, fear-causing information nuggets going around. Well, during after the weekend after George Floyd's murder, and the following days, when literally Minneapolis was burning, the news that was going around on Nextdoor or text messages or whatever was really frightful, really fearful. It was that people were coming from, like, the Proud Boys were coming to town and they were going to take over, or look out for people in the alleys because they're going to plant bombs in your trash cans. And And, you know, the violence that's happening just 2 miles from our house, which is, it's a world away, this 2 miles, but still, it's just 2 miles, was spreading out to the different neighborhoods. And you know, we were being told to have go bags by the door in case we had to get out of the city. And you know, of course, that's such a luxury, right? To have a car, to be able to have a go bag, to be able to have somewhere to go. So Craig had the idea to convene for our city council person, our ward, and we contacted her, and about 5 hours later, both of us can't quite remember, it was such a crush. We contacted her and said, would you like us to convene the ward, and we'll put the word out, and or you put the word out? And she said, well, sure, but you know, everybody's gonna, it won't be pretty because people are Zoom bombing and angry, or you know, just fearful, or people have, she's used to going to meetings where people are yelling at her. Well,
Oh,
that-
yeah.
that's increased 100-fold
Yeah.
in recent years. Anyway, we put the word out. We held 2 meetings. The first one had 300 people. The second one had 200 people. I brought together a group of conveners, and they were my security team, and we created a design. And the main communication channel was in the chat. And, you know, we did open it up at the end for voice Q&A, but, you know, we were doing having everybody push their communications into the chat. And there was one guy that was particularly snarky, like the council person would say something and he'd post something in the chat to counter what she was saying. And she'd say something else and he'd go, well, that's not what I've heard, and blah, blah, blah. We get to the end of the hour. We just had an hour. And get to the end of the hour and he puts in the chat, wow, this is what civil society should look like. This is what civil society does look like. Meaning we could come together as neighbors. And I really love what you brought forward, Teo, about belonging together. We decided we belonged together and we would help each other. So, you know, we figured out neighborhood patrols, how to stay up. You know, we would take turns staying up to protect the local shop owners and things like that. And then we did it with one other ward, which was the ward where most of the fires were happening. And we got the same result. My point is that and boy, talk about it. Were we afraid of disappointing these council people? Oh yes. And afraid of disappointing our neighbors? Absolutely. But that can't stop me. Can't stop me. I can't not try to show up and create these spaces. And I really believe they can make a difference in what's coming this coming year. That every time we can create a space where people feel like they belong, it doesn't matter where we are on the continuum of fear, because that's really what our politics today is a continuum of fear. So that we rediscover our shared humanity. So I say this not as a kudos to us, as a kudos to the work that we're all doing. This isn't just nice, soft stuff. It works. It matters.
Yeah.
And it's going to matter more than ever this year and next, because we think this year is going to be a shit show. Next year promises to hold more.
Yeah, regardless of outcome, next year is going to be arguably a bigger shit show, to use your term. Yes.
Right. So let's keep creating these spaces.
Yeah. It just made me remember, Patricia, when I was a junior in college when John Kennedy was assassinated in this and we were in this little town in central Maine where my college was. And I was working part-time in the YMCA. It was not a YMCA without a pool, the gym, or any. It was a building where the particularly young people would come after school and just want to be. Well, in this case, the director said, "Would you come and just have the door open and see whoever comes?" And the word got out. We didn't put out any messages. We just said the door's open if you want to come and talk. And I just sat there, and the room filled, and it was totally silent. I would guess 100 kids came through that door, kids who otherwise would be buzzing, talking, yakking. We just sat, and they expected I might say something. And basically I said, why don't we just sit and feel? And it was amazing. And after a while, the silence was broken, but by crying. Some people started to cry and others cried. And then without saying, hey, okay, time's up, everyone go back to the real world, people just started to filter out very quietly. That was an amazing time. That was one of the best times I ever convened anyone without saying a goddamn word. And we were definitely moved by the loss of that president. And things changed after that a lot. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that moment. And you and Craig, that was important that you did that.
Well, that's what we all do, right?
Yeah.
Dave, you mentioned the Kennedy assassination, which
Yeah.
was a national tragedy, right? And I wonder now, again, the invitation to those of us who are here and who convene and create and design these kinds of spaces, that if that moment happened, regardless of who is sitting in that chair, based on the narratives that we get, based on where we are generationally,
Yeah.
do you think if you opened that door, how many would you get?
Yeah. It's a
And when
question.
that happens, and I know there's such a valence around Orange Man bad, you know, if Orange Man went down, there would be people rejoicing.
Yeah.
Would there not?
So,
And that I think is a big difference today. And that's what makes it more of a challenge to have a space like Patricia, like you're saying, a space that's designed for togethering, that's designed to have human beings interact as humans, that we come with curiosity, and God forbid, for the third month in a row, I'm going to bring love into it. You know, that it is, and not everybody is capable of loving each other like that. But you know, if you have the invitation, you have the place, whoever comes is the right people, whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened.
yeah, that's an important rostrum, really. Whoever comes to the right people, no matter what we're convening. Yeah, I've been helping out with the intensive learning circles with Bill Brendel. Got started. He's in Minnesota. I think you know Bill, don't you, Patricia? He's a really cool guy, and so he open source network, OD, open source OD, and I said, well, I'll co-facilitate. So we prepared, and I read the script, and they use a case. They used the case of Frances Baldwin this time, her first day in her first consulting job, a little case. It was enacted. People performed the key roles, and then we just stop, screen, discuss, choose which way do you think you want to go, and then we move forward. Well, there's a lot of preparation, well done, and all of that, but only one person came for that particular event. And Lisa Thomas and I were the co-facilitators. And I said, Lisa, how many people are going to show up? She says, I don't know, 1 or 100. It was 1. We processed it just as if there were 100. Only it was better because this young woman said, among other things, and she had some great insights on the case. She said, I've been considering going for a doctorate in organization development and change. And I saw that Frances was affiliated with a doctoral program in Ohio. She was out in somewhere, California, some godforsaken place like California. And so that person may end up at some point, you know, coming where Theo is right now, and Lisa, and just saying, you know, hey, I was thinking about it, but then after I went through that experience, 1 hour experience with those two folks, I decided, oh, damn it, I'm going to do it. And then there's a life change right there. So 1 or 100 doesn't matter. Like today, I'd love to see 20 other authors on this call, but I've loved this call because we've had airtime.
I think the only other thought I just had before you were speaking, Dave, was what I think, Patricia, you said about if this next 10 months is going to be a challenge. So, you know, even exponentially after with the result. And so the thought that came to mind was, you know, the more we can take the opportunity in the impending 10 months, feel like there's more currency I have after for folks to say, don't agree with you, but you tried. So I'm willing to listen to you. I'm willing to potentially try to make this not as big of a catastrophe as it could be, you know, taking sides and such. So if we do nothing in these 10 months, then we kind of ensure maybe worse result after without any olive branches and trying to align expectation.
I think the challenge is never leave your house unless you're carrying an olive branch.
Hmm.
Have one handy.
And just maybe I can manage to let go of some of the expectations that I have for my belonging.
Yeah.
You know,
Say more.
I think too much of our conversations are one-dimensional. Like this idea that, you know, a black man is a black man, and so he certain things, or a Democrat, or whatever category people pick. And so because that category doesn't match, right? I have Democrat over here and Republican over here, so we can't match because we don't belong together. We might both be Democrats, but one of us might be a Michigan fan and the other one might be an Ohio State fan. Does that mean we don't belong, or, you know, where and how do we belong? There's more to us than our political convictions that I think some of us don't even carry as intensely as our media environment would suggest we ought to.
Right.
I continue to believe that a majority of Democrats and a majority of Republicans are in a very close space toward one another, yet we have this supposed identification of an in-between point that puts us on opposite sides of some perceived spectrum or idea, whether that be around questions of abortion or questions of sexuality and sexual expression or gender identity. I think so many more of us are so much closer together, but we are being told that there is this like either or in the middle that puts us opposite, when really I think we much like I think we need to get rid of some of these middle points on some of these spectrums that suggest that you're on one side or the other. Like, no, we're this far apart, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Let's talk about why you're here and why you're here on the spectrum without having this perceived in between that I'm not sure always exists.
Right. Yeah, one of our members works for there's this thing called StoryCorps. It's an NPR project. there's a side project that is very controversial within StoryCorps called One Small Step, where they are interviewing people, it's not an either or, but people that have maybe differing ideas, not red or blue, but differing ideas. And Stephanie says that after, like, I think she's done 150 interviews now. She said that it's unbelievable how close together most people are, not far apart.
Yeah.
More shared humanity than there is opposition, but that doesn't sell papers.
To listen to some of those. That's
I have.
wonderful.
Yeah, I have to go. How do you guys
Yep.
like to close out?
Teo's going to get the benediction.
Thank you for this hour, for this time. Yes, however, whatever body language expression you feel comfortable with to say farewell. Thank you all so much for being here. And have a wonderful rest of this first Thursday of the new year.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all.
See you next month, everyone. Or sooner.